Okay, this quick video is going to take you through the different parts that you need to have in your Essential Maths PSMT for Year 11 and 12 in Queensland. What you're looking at right here on the screen is the marking guide, and the marking guide gives you a good idea of what is required in your assignment. Always check with your teacher. If your teacher doesn't give you much information, then make sure that you have prepared a full draft. That way the teacher can provide feedback and let you know what you haven't achieved or what you have got wrong at this point, what needs to be added, etc. All right. In a PSMT, common elements that you require are an introduction, mathematical concepts and techniques, observations, assumptions, analysis and discussion, evaluation, and a conclusion. Now, having a report structure like this allows for the A response mark to be marked here, a logical organization of the response. And if you explain what you're doing and why you're doing it in each of these steps, then you're probably going to hit this reading independently of the task sheet. If you're explaining why you did things in a mathematical way, you're also starting to hit this A-level criterion of justification of your decisions using mathematical reasoning. Okay, throughout, what you're looking for is using math language. If you're unsure what math language you need to use, check out your textbook on the same topic, and you'll see all of the different mathematical words that they use in there, and that's the kind of words that you want to put into your Essential Maths PSMT. So let's start with the introduction. The introduction is a summary of your task. So have a look at your sheet or your task sheet, and there'll be a context, some background information, and then the actual task. This is what you actually want to look at and say, what is this task asking me to do? And then once you understand what it's asking you to do, pretend that you're telling someone else, another student who hasn't read the task sheet or can't see the task sheet, or your parents or carers, and then rewrite the task in your own words. Now, if you're using this video to actually complete your PSMT, then I suggest you pause right now and go and write your introduction. Rewrite the task from your task sheet into your own words. Right? It only needs to be about 3 to 4 sentences long, so it's a small paragraph. So pause here, go and write your introduction. All right, the next topic, the next heading I suggest is mathematical concepts and techniques. This is a list of the things that you're going to use in your assignment. I'm going to use Excel. I'm going to use area formulas. Don't just stop there though. Which area formulas? Area of a rectangle, area of a circle, surface area of a triangular prism, and actually put the rules in, right? That's some of that mathematical language that you're going to have there. Quite often, people will come back and complete this section because you might find yourself using some maths that you didn't write in there. So you're going to come back and fill this in at the end of the task. My suggestion to you is that this is a good time to start explaining why you're doing things. This bottom criteria here, justified mathematical translation of the simple and important aspects of the task. So why are you actually going to use Excel? How are you actually going to use Excel? So a good idea is a table. You put the list of things you're going to use in here, and then you create this column to explain how or why this will be used. And if you have empty spaces, you know you didn't explain that section and you're not going to be hitting that justification. Now, again, pause here. Go and complete this section of your PSMT and then come back to the video. All right, the next subheading, or I would have, is observations. Now you can see this is actually a element of the marking criteria all on its own. Justified statements of important observations. Right? An observation is something that you can read within the task or research for the task. So it is information that is written down or that is generally known or easily found by anyone. Okay. So when you read the task, what important information did they give? If they've asked you to design a garden, did they tell you how big the garden is? Did they say it has to be 10 by 15 meters? That's an observation. I observed that the task told me it had to be 10 by 15 meters. Right? That's an observation, something that you read in the task. Okay. Now, again, you need to have more than one because there is a plural here, important observations, and they need to be justified, which means you need to explain why it is important, right? Again, I'm suggesting a table, the actual observation on this side. This is important because, so I observe that the task says my garden must be 10 meters by 15 meters. This is important because it restricts the size that I have, or it sets the boundaries that I have to put in all the other elements. I can't have something which is larger than this, right? This is going to define every choice that I make throughout the rest of the assignment. So that's why it's important. That's your ability to justify, explain, tell me why that this is important. Now, after the observations, we jump up to this criteria, which is assumptions. I suggest, again, pause the video here, complete your table, and then come back to the task. All right, the next one is assumptions. Assumptions are things that you need to decide before you can go on. Right? So it's not being given to you. The information has not been given to you within the task. You have to make a decision or you can't move forward. So you're assuming that this is correct information because it wasn't written anywhere. All right, so when you read the task, what doesn't it tell you? That you have to kind of guess, educated guess, because without it, you can't even begin. Now, like observations, it's plural, right? Justified statements of important assumptions. So you need more than one. And the top mark, you have to justify it. You have to explain why. Why is that important? I'm suggesting you use a table again. Put the assumption on this side, and this is important because. Now let's go back to that garden one. Let's imagine the task said, make a garden. Right? That's all it said. It didn't tell you how big it was. So you decided the garden was going to be 10 by 15 meters. Right? That's your decision to make it that big. And why is this important? Well, one, you can't draw a scale diagram of your garden. You can't decide how big the pool can be that you're going to put into your garden or how big the patio is until you know how big the garden is, right? So if your garden's 3 meters by 5 meters that you decide, well, that's going to limit the size of a pool that you might be putting in. So you need to decide the size before you can even start to draw it and think out what elements and how big the elements are that you can put into the garden. So if it didn't tell you the size, you have to come up with a size before you can start. So that's an assumption. All right, pause the video here, go and write your assumptions, set up your table, write it all in, making sure that you've completed that right-hand side of the column. So you're giving a reason for this assumption. What are you going to do with that guess? And come back to the video. All right, now that you've got the first part, your assumptions, your observations, and the math you're going to use, you need to actually do the math, right? Analysis and discussion is your heading. This is where you're going to put all of the math to develop an answer. All right, so you're going to use your area rules here. You're going to use your probability rules here. You're going to find mean, median, mode here. Whatever it is you need to do to answer the question goes in this section. So all of the math goes in this section. Right? Use some subheadings. So if you're saying design of the garden, design of the patio, design of the pool area, so use some subheadings to really tell your reader what you're doing. Right? That's that whole logical report criteria for the communication in an A level. The person understands what you're doing as you're doing it. That way, you're hitting that logical. That way you're hitting that criteria. Right? Don't just type your math in. Right? There has to be an explanation. So don't just have A equals LW, A equals 6 by 10, A equals 60. What's that area for? Right? The area of my backyard is 6 meters by 10 meters. So to find the area, I do length times width. The reason why I need the area is because I'm going to grass all of that, and I need to know the square meters so that I can work out the cost of the grass. Right? So it's again getting this justifying why you're doing things. So by explaining what you're doing and why you're hitting that, there's also the justification in the communication mark that you're looking for. Now, for mostly the analysis and discussion part, we'll also be looking for this criteria on the right here. So accurate use of the math, right, to complete the task. So did you get all of your math done correctly? Make sure that is a part of your assignment for the A. Efficient use of technology. So you'll need to ask your teacher, what kind of tech do you want me to put in here? And then you have to make sure that you used it properly. So if you're using a spreadsheet, you have to use the spreadsheet to do the maths. So you can't just type in the width is 6, the length is 10, the area is 60. You need to use the spreadsheet to actually do the length times width calculation for you. That would be efficient use of technology. Right? There are other things that can be used, online calculators and so on, but you might need to ask your teacher, what technology do you want in here? And then a complete solution is, well, do you actually have an answer to the question that was asked? And do you have all the elements in your assignment that the teacher wants? So that's your complete solution. So stop the video here, go and find all the answers and complete all the math for your task before you come back to this video. All right, the next section is the evaluation section, and there are a few things that need to be in here that are going to be under subheadings. Right? This is essentially where you're going to decide how good your answer is. Definitely need to use subheadings to show the teacher where to find each of the parts. This is the criteria. You're going to verify your results. You're going to talk about how good your solution is, how reasonable it is based on your assumptions, how reasonable it is based on your observations. You're going to have some strengths and you're going to have some limitations, and you're going to explain them. You're going to justify them. So your subheadings are verified results. Subheadings are verified results, reasonableness of solution based on assumptions, reasonableness of solution based on observations, strengths, and limitations. So the first of those is verified results, and you got to ask yourself, how can I show someone that my answers are accurate? What can I do to show that my math is correct? So if you did your math by hand, like you found the mean, median, mode, range, standard deviation, etc. by hand, then you could use an online calculator or an Excel spreadsheet to develop all of those answers as well, and then show that those answers match your answers, therefore your results are correct. Okay, this is probably one of the hardest things to do in Essential Math, so listen to your teacher. They'll be giving you some guidance at some point. Don't forget, though, that you want to use the correct mathematical language as you're doing this, and explain what you're doing and why you're doing it, so you're kind of hitting that justification, right? So verified results is this top dot point in the evaluate and verify marking part of the scheme. So you would want to pause the video here and then go and verify your results and come back to the video. The next subheading in the evaluation section is reasonableness of solution based on assumptions, right? It's got its own dot point in the marking criteria. So this is not a section about how good your assumptions are. This is not where you're going to say, my assumption's really good. I chose a good area for my backyard, my garden, right? What you're saying here is my solution, my answer is really good based on this assumption. Right? Or my solution's not really good based on this assumption. Okay, I suggest you complete a table like this one because, again, it'll make sure that you're justifying it. Right, so you rewrite your assumption in here. So go back to the top of your assignment, copy and paste one of, well, you need two at least, copy and paste a few of the assumptions into this side of the table, as is, right, word for word. Then on this side of the table, what we're going to do is we're either going to say my solution is reasonable based on this assumption because, or you're going to say my solution is not reasonable based on this assumption. With assumptions, you can tend to get away with it, every one of them like this. So you can say my solution is reasonable based on this assumption because I used this assumption in my assignment to do all of my math. But if this assumption is incorrect, then the solution's not reasonable. So back to the garden one, I assumed that the garden was 10 metres by 15 metres. My solution's reasonable because my garden is 10 metres by 15 metres, and everything that I was told to put into the garden, the pool, the patio, the sand box for the children and so on, is in there and it fits. So my solution is reasonable. However, if the people wanted a smaller garden or a bigger garden, then my design and my solution is not reasonable. A smaller garden would mean that my patio and pool and the sandbox don't fit, or a larger garden might mean that I should have done a bigger patio or a bigger pool to fill up the space in a better way. So do you see how I'm saying that my answer is good based on the assumption, but if the assumption's wrong, then probably my answer's not so good. So pause the video here and go and have a look at your assignment and complete this table. The next one is reasonableness of solution based on observations. Again, it's not how good your observations are, it's how good your answer is. Again, I suggest you complete a table. All right, so copy and paste some observations here, and then you're filling in this side. You've only got two choices. My solution is reasonable based on this observation because my solution is unreasonable based on this observation because. So back to the garden one, if you observe that they told you that the garden had to be 10 metres by 15 metres, my solution is reasonable because the garden that I have developed is 10 by 15 metres and every element that needs to be put into that space is in this space. And therefore, my answer meets this observation. On the other hand, some observations, they might tell you something important, and then as you progress through the maths, you might have your answer might contradict that, and therefore your solution, you might say, is unreasonable based on this observation because my solution says that this is more likely than what the research suggests, so my solution might not be reasonable, or the research that I sourced might not be as accurate as I thought. Okay, so you really only can complete one of these two sentences within this side of the table. Pause video here and have a go at that. Again, the more you do, the more likely you'll get some good feedback from your teacher on how you went. The next section is strengths. This is of your model. What were good things about your model, right? You need at least two and you need to justify them. Now, loads of students I have, they go, oh, my solution is strong because I was accurate. It's not really a strength of your model. You should be accurate. You have 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, maybe longer, to be accurate, right? So you should have been accurate. So you're not looking at that kind of strength. It's about your actual model. Right, again, I suggest you complete a table. Right? Put the strength in this side. This is a strength because. So a simple strength might be the simplicity of your solution. So it was really easy to develop this answer, and therefore it can be transferred to other data and they can use the same techniques to develop a similar answer for a different set of data. So that's a strength. Right, so pausing the video here to have a go at this. Don't forget you're saying why. Why is this a strength to hit that justified? After strengths come limitations. The limitations is just the opposite of the strength, but it's not a limitation. You can't say, oh, I rounded poorly, or I got the maths wrong, or I didn't put in enough effort. That's your limitation, not a limitation of your solution. You need at least two, and you have to explain them. So again, I'm going to suggest you use a table. You put the limitation in here, and then you have a go at answering this sentence. This is a limitation because, and then putting it in there. So some examples might be your assumptions. I assumed that the building I was designing would have a 2.4 meter ceiling. So I decided that, right? So this is a limitation because I didn't ask anyone, and all of my calculations for area for painting requires that 2.4 meter high. So if they come back and they said, no, we want 3 meter high solutions, ceilings, then my maths is completely wrong, right? This is a limitation because it was based on a bunch of assumptions. Other things, like if I'm designing a house, for example, when I drew it, I drew it with pencil and I put in internal structures for walls and stuff, but I kind of ignored the fact that the wall has thickness, and so inside of that wouldn't be painted. It's a limitation because probably won't require as much paint because I ignored the walls and so on. So you're looking for things that are wrong with the model or with the solution, not with what you did. Okay, pause the video here and go and complete a similar table. And then the last thing you want in your assignment is a conclusion. And like anything, you're just going to be finishing off the report. It's a logical organization. So in that conclusion, you want a quick summary of your task and your overall findings. And the thing that strikes me most about students' assignments is they actually don't ever answer the questions that were posed. So make sure that there is an answer to the question here or somewhere else in the assignment so that you've told the person the answer to the overall question that they posed. All right. Now that's the end of your assignment, and if you get all of this done and then you hand in this as your draft, your teacher will be able to provide you with better feedback and give you ideas on how you can improve the different sections. Always listen to your teacher. They are marking your work, and if they tell you to add something or this should be a section, then do what they say. Don't just rely on this video. Thanks for watching.